Hi, so this is a quick look at power over Ethernet for IP cameras. So I'm using a dome camera that would usually be up in the eaves of my house, but I switched it out. And it's really a no-name camera from Tech. It's actually quite nice, and I have a review for that separate. But the reason that I'm using it right now is because it has powered XYZ and zoom functions, so when I plug it in you can actually see that something's happening quite easily. So people like Wi-Fi cameras, but even if you have a Wi-Fi camera and you don't have the issues of running an Ethernet cable out, you do have the problem that you still have to find a power source. So this one you could run a 12 volt source converter, and it would plug in, and then you can see that it starts to go through the boot up routine, and I could plug it into Ethernet through the other the RJ45 connectors. So that's fine, but I don't have many plugs with 120 volts up in my attic or around my eaves. So another alternative to run power out to cameras is power over Ethernet, and that's where you're pumping the power down the internet cable, the Ethernet cable, as well as taking out the IP camera data stream. So this camera does not. This is not a POE camera, but you can get POE cameras. Generally, if you have a POE camera, it's not going to have Wi-Fi because they know that you're going to have to run an Ethernet cable to it. But this one doesn't have. This one doesn't have POE, so you can give it the POE electronics through a third-party unit, which is going to cost you like $10 to $20, and pretty easy to use. Okay, so what you're going to plug in the power and the internet, pretty much like you usually would with two cables, but now this is a splitter. So what you've done is you've supplied power through the internet cable, and so this should start to boot up again. Now the trick there is that what I just used was a desktop switch that has POE function. This is a gigabit unit, which is kind of like pretty high end with 8 units that I got a good deal on, so I bought it. But you can get one of these, or you can get a 100 megabit unit for about $40 now, less than $40. So I'm pumping out the power from the desktop switch that has the POE built in, and it's going into the splitter, and then it's being delivered to the camera. These things seem to sort out the voltage issues, which was like, I think everybody freaks out, including me initially. I think this thing is pumping out up to 48 volts, but somewhere along the way the system knows that it's going to get cut down to 12 volts for this camera. So I have a bunch of POE cameras, so this thing allows me to run all of them at one go. I started off with individual units, like this TP-Link one, where it'll only support one camera. So you're putting in the power somewhere, and you're putting in the Ethernet, or taking out the IP signal on the one side, and on the other side you're pumping out power and running the data signal through your internet cable again. And so it wakes up and off it goes. So these individual, if you've just got one camera, these individual units cost about $20, probably less. I think this one is a gigabit unit, and so you can get no-name ones as well as, like, this one's TP-Link, which is fine if you think you're only going to have one camera. But rapidly, if you're buying 4 of these at $20 a pop, then you'd be better off buying a sort of low-end the POE router switch for about $40. What I've done is I keep this at home, and these things I'm moving out to my cabin, where I like to have individual units, because during the winter, if something goes wrong and one fails, or one unit fails, then the other ones are still working. Whereas if I had this and that failed to camp, then everything would be kind of going out. Just to make the point, I have a fairly standard switch down here. Oh, I wonder where that's. And you know, if I use that, then you know, right now I don't have. I'm not giving it any power from that standard switch. So you need a POE switch. So I really like these things because you just have to drill a 1/2-inch hole through, through a wall, and then you can jack your you can push your cable through. If you got something that's low profile, you might be able to get away with less than a 1/2 inch, and then run the cable through and surround it with some cork, and you really haven't done a lot of damage, and it's only cost you the price of a cable. I can do my internet cabling myself. I don't have to have anybody come in and install me a new 120 volt source. Okay, so I also have links to the various components on my webpage if you want to take a look at that at camprehab.net. So thanks for looking.